What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Inside Arkansas Football Show. Curtis Wilkerson and Andrew Ellis of Inside Arkansas here with you on this game week. Finally, just a couple days out from the start of the Razorback football season. Today's episode of the show is presented by BetSaracen. It's Arkansas's #1 sports betting app. Just download on your iPhone or your Android or go to BetSaracen.com. It's BetSaracen, proud partner of us here at Inside Arkansas. Hey, folks, a quick PSA before we get rolling here today. Subscribe to the Inside Arkansas YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Turn on your noties because honestly, we got a ton of content coming your way here with the start of football season. Thursday nights at 8 p.m. are going to be our EA Sports video game live streams that were honestly a lot of fun last year. Saturday mornings, we'll be doing live pregame shows around 9 a.m. with previews, injury updates, bold predictions, challenges to some players, and more for the upcoming opponents. Away games, we'll be doing some watch party weekends. You want to tap in on those if you've done it for baseball or for basketball in the past. And then we'll be going live immediately following the end of every game for our post-game live reaction show. We also got our post-game accountability sessions where we go back in hindsight after the games and hold ourselves accountable and you accountable for the things that we say pregame. And finally, our post-game position report cards. So did you get all that? I hope you did. If you didn't, that's why those notifications come in handy for you. But today we're going to have a little bit of fun with some stat projections, some over-unders, what's more likely this season for the Razorbacks with a little bit of an individual stat breakdown kind of thing. Before we get into it, Andrew, are you tickled pink or perhaps tickled Razorback red that we're finally on the horizon of the start of football season?
I'm definitely something. I'm definitely some shade of red, like in excitement, and there's a little bit of anxiety there as well, but not as much whenever you don't have a huge marquee matchup on Saturday, which honestly, I said it yesterday, I'm a fan of that. I like kind of starting the season because you don't like week one, you don't need to get excited about the opponent. It's just exciting to watch your squad play. And, it's week one and, it's the first day of the year. It's like the first day of school. You don't care what the teachers have to say in class. You're just happy to be there. That's kind of where I'm at with Saturday, where it's like, Arkansas could be playing Texas. They could be playing Army. They could be playing the Sisters of the Poor. Like, they could be playing anybody, and I'd be excited. And I'm kind of glad that we do get a little bit of a, not to put down Alabama A&M, but a little bit of a fun one. It's going to be a fun opener for the Arkansas Razorbacks. But Curtis, I've got a prediction. We're going to make a lot of predictions on this show. And by the way, we did this last year. A few years ago, I wrote a famed story at hogsports.com where I basically dead on predicted KJ Jefferson's 2022 stat. Nailed it. I'm still chasing that high. But we're going to make a lot of predictions on this show. But I want to start with one, Curtis. I think the fall of 2025 is going to be the year where the Razorback fan base collectively stops putting us in a box of being just a basketball guy and a baseball guy. That's all everyone ever says about us is, oh, that's Curtis Wilkerson, the really tall, really handsome guy who knows basketball. And for Andrew Ellis, they say that's the really charming, really good-looking, really suave baseball guy is what they say about me. And I think that's unfair. Like, I think we actually are pretty well-rounded in our coverage, football, basketball, baseball. But we've talked about it before. You and I are as qualified to talk about this Arkansas football team as anyone in the state. We've got a good resume, and I feel like it's time people start acknowledging that. And so hopefully all that content you listed out, people will tap in, support, enjoy this journey with us. Whatever this season is going to be, I'm excited to watch it play out, and I'm excited to break it down with my guy C-Dub.
Well, you bring up a good point, Andrew, because we have been covering Arkansas football professionally as long as Sam Pittman's been coaching Arkansas football. And allegedly, he's the longest tenured since, the Little Rock Touchdown Club started a couple decades ago. So I think we've earned our stripes here, but people got to start listening, picking up what we're putting down a little bit. I love it, man. I really do. I say let's just jump right into it here and have a little bit of fun. And what we did for the people who are listening at home or watching on YouTube is we sort of just we split up different position groups or categories, if you will. And Andrew, you had the passing stats from who I think we hope will be Taylon Green for a vast majority of the full season, Lord willing, and health pending there. So I'll let you take it away, and then we'll kind of work our way through it all.
Yeah, so Taylon Green, it's very interesting with him. One, again, you said we hope he's the guy all season long. His health is going to be a key factor here, and we're going to talk about his stats from last year, some of his stats at Boise State, and I think his health is a very big factor when you're talking about and understanding the context of what he did for Arkansas last year. But I also feel like it gave us a nice little barometer for like what to expect with him at quarterback because, these guys get better, they improve, they make strides, but it's not like guys are going to completely change throughout their, the course of their careers for the most part. And if you look at Taylor Green, he's been in the same statistical range for the 3 years he's been a starter at the Division I level, 2 years at Boise State, 1 at Arkansas. He throws 14 touchdowns his first year as a starter, throws 11 the next, throws 15 last year at Arkansas. So again, right there in that same mix. Interceptions were about the same as well. Completion percentage was right around 60. Then he goes to 57. Now he's back up to 61. But again, right there in that same range. I think we all collectively, as a fan base and just observers, and hell, national people too. It's not just us. We all kind of assume that Taylor Green is going to take a pretty big statistical leap in at least one of those categories. Like he's either going to really improve the completion percentage, different offense, he's more comfortable, or he's going to finally kind of put it together in a touchdown standpoint. Now, his yardage, by the way, last year, 242 passing yards per game in the SEC. I believe that was in the top 4 of the SEC. Like a legitimate number there, something to build on. My question to you, Curtis, because again, his stats last year by the end of the year, he completed 60.4% of his passes, threw for over 3,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. My question to you, Curtis, what is more likely? Shout out to John Neighbors. Loves a good what's more likely. What is more likely? Taylor Green, his completion percentage jumps to 65%, or he throws 25 passing touchdowns. I think there's a lot of Razorback fans who expect both things to happen. And I do think that, perhaps you don't think either one of these things happen. But if he were going to have a real noticeable step forward in his production, would it be just more touchdowns, or would he be a little bit more efficient with the football? And would you see that completion percentage get up to 65%, or do you think he's capable of that?
This is a great question. This is a great what's more likely. I love that you started off with this. I'm going to go with the 65%. And it's interesting because as you were saying some of the things you said, and I was writing down some notes, and one of the things that I wrote down was the arrow pointing up on completion percentage. Now, that's not me saying that all of a sudden he's going to become this super accurate savant, where he's just threading the needle with the football. He's had some issues with putting it where it needs to be there in the past. But I do think there's something to be said for all the things that we've talked about so often, Andrew, over the course of the last few months, really since the start of the offseason, when we knew for sure that Taylor Green was going to be coming back. Oh, year 2 under Bobby Petrino, right? And I really like everything that I've heard when Bobby Petrino has talked about Taylor Green in terms of his command of the offense, getting guys lined up, making checks, making reads, delivering the football before guys breaking their routes. All those things are signs of a quarterback that's more comfortable in his surroundings, more comfortable within the offense. And from that standpoint, I think he's going to complete some more passes. I don't know what your other questions are here for the quarterbacks. I do think that we're going to see an uptick in touchdowns thrown. I don't know that I would go that high. I want to say that last year I either projected 18-8 or 20-8 in touchdown and interceptions, and that just wasn't a thing. And if I recall correctly, how many touchdowns did he throw in that bowl game, Taylor?
So let's see. He threw 2 touchdowns in that bowl game.
Okay,
he was 11 for 21, 341 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then I think he had a rushing touchdown as well.
Dotting it up, man. But yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things with this offense last year was, and we talked about it right before we started recording, is, man, they just racked up the yards. If you look at total offense or whatever, you're like, man, this is a pretty potent attack there. But then it didn't necessarily correlate. Struggles in the red zone, struggles protecting the football. And you hope that those are things that just kind of organically improve for you. If the offensive line is better, I think that's going to help Taylor Green. So I do think he's going to throw for more touchdowns. I wouldn't go all the way to 25 personally, but I think 65% as a passer is attainable, even though it would be the high water mark of his career with an entirely new cast of characters to throw the football to.
Yeah, I'm with you on the completion percentage thing, and I don't know how likely it is that it's going to take a 5% jump or whatever, but I think I can see that. One thing I will notice about Taylor Green is that he's had the last 2 years, he's been 8.3 yards per attempt. So his yardage has actually been pretty impressive. I mean, last year, again, he racked up the yardage. Some of that a lot of it came in non-conference play. He was a little bit more boomer bust. Like if you look at his game log, I mean, he had 416 yards against Oklahoma State. But he had 149 against Texas, had 151 against Auburn, had 314 against Mississippi State, even 266 against Tennessee, 279 against A&M. But then he'd have 158 against Ole Miss. Like, he was a little bit up and down there. But I do think this offense is going to have a little bit more consistency, and they had a lot of big play threat last year. And I think Arkansas is going to have some. I think C.J. Brown's a fast guy. I think Monte Harrison is catching 70-yard touchdowns everywhere. Omega Blake, of course, we know what he can do down the field. But I think there's going to be a little bit more get the ball out of his hands quickly, easy completions, and we'll see what that kind of looks like for Taylen Green. But I want to touch on the yardage for just a little bit longer here. So, again, he had last year, Taylen Green had 3,154 passing yards and 602 rushing yards. That combined, if for those that counting at home that don't have your calculator, that's 3,756 yards, which is about 50 yards shy of Ryan Mallett's school record for total offense from a quarterback. Funny thing about Ryan Mallett is he had negative 74 rushing yards. So all of it was passing. But Taylen was very, very close to breaking the school record for total offense from a quarterback. And so my question to you, Curtis, we're going to go over under here. The school record is 3,795, but we're going to go just to even 3,800. Do you think Taylen will have more or less than 3,800 yards of offense, which is a little bit more, but like right where he was at last year? For those that are wondering, that would be 292.3 yards per game in 13 games, 316.6 in 12 games. So this really comes down to, do you think Arkansas is making a bowl game, and do you think Taylen Green is going to stay healthy and be good at football?
Well, I did project him to make a bowl, unlike you, Andrew, this year. So I'm going to go over. I think he will do that. Now, what did you say his rushing total was last year, Taylen's?
602 yards. And I know this is the passing section. We'll do the rushing stuff, but 602 last year.
Okay, gotcha. And so my thought process on this was I actually think he might throw for a little bit less than he did last year. And we'll see if that winds up being the case or not. Maybe he's just – I look at some of those outliers, but you just mentioned that he was a little bit erratic, a little bit up and down with those yardages. So maybe it balances out, but I do think he'll rush for more. And I think some of it's going to be, at least I hope, he's learned from, his mistakes, learned the lessons of the days of taking 13-yard sacks over and over and skewing some of those numbers. I do think he's going to have kind of a crazy type of year with his legs. And boy, I didn't realize he was as close as he was to doing it last year. I'm going to go over on this. If they make a bowl game, I will use that qualifier there and take the easy way out. If not, I probably would go a little bit under, but I think he's going to be right in that ballpark again.
Yeah, right around. I mean, listen, 300 yards, like right around 300 yards per game total offense, like nothing to scoff at. For context, the highest mark KJ Jefferson ever had as the quarterback at Arkansas, and he made a bowl game in 2 of his 3 years, 3,340 yards. That's what he had in 2021. That was the most total offense he had. Now, he missed a game or two in that 2022 season. Of course, 2023 was a disaster. But, like, Taylen accomplished something last year in terms of total offense that KJ really never even came close to. And so I think it's a high bar. But, like, we've seen with this offense, I mean, Taylen Green, I don't even think they were firing on all cylinders last year. And they were able to rack up yardage. So I do think he's going to be able to do something like that. To make you feel better about the rushing, by the way, and I know we're gonna get to the rushing section in a second here. Taylen last year, it's actually stunning. He had -5 rushing yards against Tennessee, -10 against LSU, -4 against Texas, and only had 10 for 16 against Ole Miss, only had 6 yards rushing against A&M. It's actually stunning how rarely Arkansas was able to get his legs going in SEC play. Now, of course, his health was a big factor in that. He was not healthy for most of those games that I just listed off. But I think he's going to be a little bit more stable of giving you 40, 50 rushing yards every SEC game or something like that. There's going to be sacks, all that. Real quick, though, touchdowns. Now, this is you already made your prediction on the passing. The school record is 36 for that. Ryan Mallett had 32 touchdowns passing and 4 rushing. Taylen, of course, last year had 15 and 8 at 23. Will he break that record will he get up into that 35, 36 range? That would be quite the improvement, because rushing touchdowns, he did have 8. Like, that's actually a pretty solid number. Do you see him cracking up there?
No, I don't think so. When I look at Taylen Green, I think he might be about the same in terms of the rushing totals again. I could see him getting 8 to 10. I mean, he's just so dynamic. But in terms of the passing there, Again, I think that he's going to have an uptick. I think he's going to be able to lead this offense to finishing drives a little bit more often than he did last year. I will say I do think without having that go-to widers like that Traylon Burks, it's like, all right, we're close to the end zone. Let's throw it up to him and let him go get it. Maybe somebody emerges in that role. But I kind of get the sense that the identity of this football team might be that Taylon Green is the man, and they're going to have a pretty versatile rushing attack. You got a big-bodied back like Braylon Russell that you're going to be able to hand it to down there near the goal line. Mike Washington is apparently, the next Emmitt Smith or whatever there. I have a feeling Arkansas might rack up the rushing touchdowns. And after last year, I could see Taylon. I'll probably go with about the same projection that I did last year, maybe in that 18 to 20 touchdown range. So I'm going to say no. I think he'll come up a little bit short of that. But in terms of the total yardage, the total offense there, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll split the difference here from my man Taylon Green.
I'm kind of right there where I feel like 30 touchdowns, which by the way, I mentioned KJ Jefferson. That's one thing KJ was a little bit, he always would have 22 passing touchdowns and then 8 or 9. I think he had 10 rushing touchdowns one year. He was right in this range. I think Taylon low 30s would be a pretty impressive mark there. I think I see him in that 30 32 range for total touchdowns, which would be quite impressive. Are we on to receivers? Or unless you have any KJ Jackson stocks or takes to fire off here. I hope we don't get to fire off KJ Jackson takes. I'll just say that.
I am 1,000% with you there. Love the kid. Excited about the future. I hope that we're not going to be talking about him throughout the course of this season. That is a fact. So I'm happy to move on to receiving. Yeah, the passing stuff is fresh on the mind. So let's do that. Let's talk about the guys catching the footballs that Taylon Green is going to throw. And, a lot was made of this last year, right? Is Taylon Green eagle-eyeing Andrew Armstrong? Well, yes, he was. He was the ultimate security blanket. He was also arguably the best wide receiver in the SEC. So I don't blame him for putting the football there. Wow, Isaac Tesla has caught more touchdown passes in an NFL preseason. He did all year with the Razorbacks. What the heck? Tyrone Broden, boy, he couldn't catch what was going on there. Is Isaiah Satania great or was he terrible? What's the deal? And the thing about the receivers this year, we really don't know anything about them. We've seen them at camp. We've seen them against Arkansas's secondary. It's just it's an entirely new cast of characters outside of C.J. Brown, who played for you sparingly, outside of Monte Harrison, who had 2 receptions the entire year, and they went out to the portal. They get a half dozen guys in the winter. They go through spring. They decide they weren't satisfied. They go out and get Jaylen Brown and Andy Jean after that. Who knows how this is going to shake out? And honestly, that was one of the few, I think, Andrew, surprises on the depth chart. We kind of knew Omega Blake was going to have one of those spots. I think we felt decent about C.J. Brown slotting in there somewhere. But then all of a sudden you got Jaylen Brown, who's been on campus for a couple months, and he's in a starting receiver role. So I think the jury's still out. I think that it's going to take a little bit of while for the pecking order to get established there. And I'm fascinated to see what it's going to look like. And with that being said, outside of, and I guess we can label some projections onto this, but I ask you, Arkansas's leader in receiving yards this season is going to be who?
So it's interesting, Curtis, because again, when Arkansas gets these guys, like when Omega Blake committed to Arkansas, we kind of had our thoughts about how good he was, what kind of role he'd have, how he would fit in. And then spring ball happens, and you don't really hear much about him. And then fall camp happens, and we've heard some good things about him. He's consistently with the ones. He's caught a couple passes in scrimmage, just caught some touchdowns. But I don't think we've had the thing where someone's come to the podium and been like, yo, Omega Blake, he's just unguardable. Like, this guy's unreal. We're hearing a lot more about other guys. And so now we, people who cover the team, are kind of in that mode of like, is that just because they know he's good and they don't feel the need to hype him up? He's an older guy. He doesn't really need that boosting. What's the case there? I don't know. It's actually fascinating because, like, again, Omega Blake has a lot of production in his career, but like, I don't think we have a really good feel for what to expect from him at Arkansas, just based on different offense, different team, different situation. He's back in the SEC where he started his career at South Carolina. How's this going to work? Still, I say all that. I think I'm rolling with Omega Blake as just my guy. Again, this is a dude that 24.8 yards per reception last year, led the entire country. That's a big number. Like, that's a big play threat. No matter what level of football you're at, like, that is notable. And he had a little low, I think it was like just under 800 yards, caught about 30 passes. It was a really impressive season. Also had 8 touchdowns, which, something they struggled to get Andrew Armstrong in the end zone We'll see if they can get Omega Blake in there a few more times. I think when you just add everything together, he's got a lot of experience, both in the SEC at South Carolina and out at Charlotte, where he became a real threat. He's got the big play ability. He's got a little bit of the red zone work going there. He's got he's 6'2", 200, 6'1", 200, like a big-bodied receiver that's also fast. I just feel like there's a lot of stability there. And so will he be the best player on the team? Will he, have as many, Andrew Armstrong had 1,100 yards in 11 games last year. Will he do that? Probably not. But he's the guy I keep coming back to. And I'm very intrigued by a lot of players in this receiver room that I'm sure we're going to talk about. But Omega Blake kind of seems like this. I don't know if safety blanket is what you would refer to as a big play guy, but I do. He's the guy that over the course of the season, he's going to have his fair share of big plays. He's going to be the guy that on 3rd and 7, they're like, man, we need to find somebody. It might as well be Omega Blake. Like, I think he's going to get some of that. I don't think he's going to lead by a massive margin, but I feel like Omega Blake is going to lead the room. And with Raylan Sharp going down in fall camp the last few weeks, he's another guy that has a lot of that stability and that experience that you just kind of know is going to contribute. With Omega Blake being just the guy that all season long, he's the only guy who's been first team the entire time. And so I just feel like there's a lot of, and with him being a senior, older guy, I think Bobby's going to find some ways to unlock things in his game. I think he's going to replicate similar production to what he had at Charlotte last year in that 700, 750 range. And I think that will lead Arkansas in receiving.
I'm glad you wrapped that the way you did, because I was going to say, just given the unknowns and nobody who's really just emerged is like, oh yeah, that's the dude. I was going to ask you what you felt like would be a fair over-under for this total, like whoever's going to lead Arkansas in receiving. And I was going to set it at 749.5 as the over-under. So
right around kind of where I'm at. So again, last year, Arkansas, Andrew Armstrong led them with 1140 in the receiving range. In the year before, it was a little bit more spread out, kind of like what we're expecting, where Armstrong had 764. Oh God, they did not throw the ball that much at all. And you had like 3 or 4 guys there with kind of 300, 200. And it was kind of that way last year. I don't think it's going to be as big of a gap between the leading receiver and everyone else. I think you're going to have maybe 3 or 4 guys over 400.
I could see that too. I think I could see that too. I would probably answer this question the same way with Omega Blake for the sake of being different. If I had to pick a dark horse, I think it would be Jaylen Brown. And yeah, it's because he's emerged, and this is a guy who they bring in post-spring. So you didn't have that evaluation on him, but he's made enough of an impression right away to where, hey, dude, we like you. We love your speed. Bobby Petrino's bringing him up every time he gets the opportunity to do so. And all of a sudden he's starting on the outside, opposite of Omega Blake going into week 1 there. I do think that's telling. Would that have been the case if Raylan Sharp had not gone down? They moved CJ Brown into the slot. Would he just be the guy on the outside? Maybe. But the fact that they're starting Jaylen Brown there, as opposed to maybe going with the Monte Harrison, who's been, I would say, arguably the most impressive wide receiver in camp, at least in the scrimmages, I do think that's telling. So, I'm not saying Arkansas's last chance you here, but Jaylen Brown's a guy who's had his issues in the past, and he was a highly, highly coveted recruit, and it just hasn't quite clicked for him yet. And maybe getting under Bobby Petrino and being in a situation where it's like, all right, if I'm going to figure it out, this is where I'm going to have to do it, will be something that pays dividends for him. So I'm sticking with Omega Blake like you, but if I had to pick a wild card, that's probably where I go. And we talked about yards, so I ask you the exact same question about receptions. Who's going to be Arkansas's leading pass catcher this season?
So 3 weeks ago, if you had asked me this, I would have for sure said Raylan Sharp. Like, without a doubt, I think I think I even said something stupid, like he was going to catch 65 passes or something like that. Like, I felt like he was going to be that leader in receptions. And that was kind of my take all along, is that Omega Blake would lead in yards because he has the big play threat, but Raylan Sharp would be the guy who has 6 receptions for 64 yards or, 5 receptions for 51 or whatever. Like, would be kind of that consistent near the line of scrimmage, throw a quick slant to him, throw a quick bubble to him. And he's a guy that I think he caught like 50-something passes last year at Fresno State, has been in a Bobby Petrino offense before at Missouri State. Like, there's a little bit of, and he's an older guy. He's a senior. So there's a little bit of just knowing how to get open, knowing how to just get those easy 6 yards. And so I think he's going to be set up to catch a lot of just meat and potatoes type of throws that are like not going to blow anybody away. And you'll be like, you won't come away from a game being like, oh, Raylan Sharp, man, he had a great day. Well, he caught 7 passes. It's like there's something there. Now, that being said, he's not listed with the first team on the depth chart, which we know why. He was banged up in camp, missed about 2 weeks, and just got back to practice late last week. And so C.J. Brown has kind of emerged in that slot. And so I'm sitting here, Curtis, I'm like, man, is it really just going to be that simple where, like, now that Raylan Sharp's not going to maybe be that starter in the slot, I just changed my prediction to C.J. Brown because he's now going to be in that role? And I am, Curtis. I buy it, actually. I still think Raylan Sharp is going to catch a lot of passes because I think both of these guys are going to play in the slot. But I am buying the fall camp storyline of C.J. Brown has found a home in the slot. You remember who they said that about almost this exact same time last year? They said that about Isaac TeSlaa, where they were like, hey, he was battling with Broden on that outside spot, loses that competition. Now we're starting to use him inside, and we actually kind of like him a little bit more. A lot of the plays we saw Isaac TeSlaa made, although Hog fans don't remember any of them, a lot of the plays that Isaac TeSlaa made came out of the slot, which, again, you look at Isaac TeSlaa, and he's a big body receiver, and you're like, slot receiver, really? That's how, they found a way to make it work. Treylon Burks caught a lot of passes out of the slot. C.J. Brown, 6'1", 200 pounds. True sophomore. They said he might have one of the top end speeds of the team, which that's another thing. When Pittman was asked about Jaylen Brown, all he said was speed. We like the speed, which I think is going to be a common theme here. But C.J. Brown has a lot of that speed as well. So I think he's going to have some big play threats. I think he's kind of like a Satania role this year a little bit, where he's going to have some deep threats, but he's also going to catch some bubbles. I think he's going to have a nice little mixture. I am buying the C.J. Brown emergence. Do I think he's going to be like this crazy, all-world, all-SEC type of player? No. And we mentioned there's going to be maybe 3 or 4 receivers in that 400, 500-yard range. I think he's probably going to end up there, but that would be quite the improvement in a sophomore year where he caught 5 passes last year for 62 yards. Like, not much production. I think most of those were in the bowl game. So I think it would be a nice step forward. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes, though. But I will give my respect to Raylan Sharp, who I still think is going to catch a lot of passes. But I think C.J. Brown, they found something there in the slot that they can work with.
Well, here's the deal for me, and you took my bit, but that's okay. Is if I'm gonna do the Jaylen Brown thing as leading receiver, and I know I said he was my wild card, then I can't go Raylan Sharp. Which is what I would like to say as a counter here, because I feel like if Raylan Sharp emerges there in the slot, then C.J. Brown probably eventually just moves back outside and he takes over there, which screws over my man Jaylen Brown in that term of the prediction. So I can't speak out of both sides of my mouth here. So I'll stick with you on C.J. Brown, although I do think Raylan Sharp is a great candidate for this for all the reasons that you laid out there. It's interesting to me. It's like, okay, the 2 guys that we're talking about here are the 2 guys with the best grasp of Bobby Petrino's system. One, because he did it at Missouri State for him for a year, and he's been here all spring. And then another in C.J. Brown, who was here at Arkansas last year, is one of the only holdovers there. It doesn't come as any surprise to me that guys in their second year of experience in this offense are the ones we're looking at saying, yeah, they're probably going to be the ones who can run their routes and get open and catch a bunch of footballs for the Razorbacks this year. Let's see. Okay, I got a couple more. We'll do some quick hitters here, and then we'll move on to the rushing attack. Over under, Andrew, 3.5 Razorbacks this season with 25 or more receptions. And there's a reason why I brought that number up, and the reason was because if I go back and look at last year, where'd it go? Arkansas had, obviously, Andrew Armstrong was 78. He was just out there absolutely burning it up. But you had 4 guys who were above that number. It was Andrew Armstrong, Isaiah Satania, Isaac TeSlaa, and then the worst tight end in SEC football history, Luke Hasz. Andrew, I think you're muted.
Did you mute me, Curtis?
I did not.
Why did I get muted all of a sudden?
I have no idea.
I just saw a graphic pop up and it was like, your mic is muted. I'm like, what the hell is that? But
I have no idea.
You can hear me now, though, right?
Oh, yeah. You're good.
So I looked at the same thing. I figured that was kind of why you did it. And I saw Luke Hasz had 26 receptions right there on that range. Now, Luke Hasz, of course, this time last year we thought was going to be an all-SEC type of tight end, a big-time threat in the offense. But I still think him catching 26 passes with a broken back and limited reps, and they really didn't even keep him on the field in third downs. I think that one of Arkansas's tight ends, and when I say one of, Rohan Jones. Like, I don't like, there's not going to be a ton of mystery. I think it's going to be him. I don't think he's going to have this, like, crazy year where he has 500 yards, but I think it's going to be kind of Blake Kern-esque in the way that he just catches those 7-yard dump offs a lot. And so I think he's going to catch 25 to 30 passes for 250, 300 yards, and will just kind of be a safety net that's just there, And I'm sure they do like his athleticism. I'm not saying he can't make plays down the field, but I think he's a safe bet to just kind of get those targets. And if you look at the offense that Arkansas ran last year, wasn't like they schemed up a ton of like weird vertical shots for their tight ends. It's a lot of, hey, it's 2nd and 10. Let's just throw you, the little dump off or the little fake block and then peel out. Like a lot of those. So I think the Rohan Jones will catch 25 passes. I think C.J. Brown, who I'm picking to lead the team in receptions, will catch 25. I think Omega Blake will catch 25. And I think there's room for one more. And Curtis, I like the idea of it being Jaylen Brown with that speed, that ability to take the top off the defense. And I think if Jaylen Brown catches 30 passes for Arkansas, that means he probably had about 500, 600 yards, because I don't think he's going to be catching a bunch of 8-yard passes. But I'm going to go with Raylan Sharp as the safe bet to catch, 35, 40 passes and, have 300, 400 yards and be in that mix as a safety blanket. So I'm going to go over with 4. And I think Jaylen Brown could make that a 5th.
I like that. I'm a little disappointed that you didn't give any love or respect to Unc Monty Harrison here, but it's okay. I get it. I understand it. I respect your stance here, but I think so too. I'm with you. I look at it and I think, okay, I feel good about Omega Blake. I feel good about both Raylan Sharp and C.J. Brown getting over that number. And then I look at it and I say, all right, well, who else could it be? I imagine somebody will step up there and do it, because I don't think anybody's going to catch 80 passes like Andrew Armstrong did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, I've heard Trey Biddy say this in the past, this wide receiver group in the unknowns. He's like, well, Taylor Green is going to throw the football, so somebody is going to catch it. And from that standpoint, I agree. Like, somebody is going to make up the gap there. It's not like he's going to throw, complete 40% this year all of a sudden, because it's different guys. So, I'll go above on that. 2 other very quick ones here, since I know it's a big topic of conversation for us throughout the course of the early portions of camp. And now we've heard about the proverbial wall. Arkansas's true freshman wide receivers, being Antonio Jordan and Caden Ferguson, will combine for how many catches in 2025? I didn't just want to just throw Antonio Jordan out there like that on an island. He's got a teammate.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And he's got a teammate in Caden Ferguson who is on the depth chart. So we got to talk about him. He's absolutely a threat. I'm going to go with a very low total here, Curtis, because I think that these catches are going to happen Saturday or maybe week 2, but it's going to happen right away. I don't buy the notion that any of the freshman receivers are going to catch passes with any regularity in SEC play. Now, if injuries happen, if, you get to October and some guy's really taking a huge step forward, and Antonio Jordan could very well be that guy, I'm going to go with 3 or 4. Okay. I think maybe Caden Ferguson catches a pass or 2 on Saturday. I think maybe Antonio Jordan, who might not be available Saturday, maybe he comes back for the Arkansas State game. Arkansas gets ahead, and then maybe they're in there. I'm going to go with 4. I don't think it's going to be a ton, and I don't think it's going to be any in SEC play, if I'm being to be perfectly honest with you, as Sam Pittman would say.
Exactly. What I'll say about this, you mentioned C.J. Brown last year as a freshman. He had 5 receptions for 62 yards. I could see either one of those guys doing that, but I don't know that they'll do a whole bunch more. And I kind of get the sense, especially after hearing that, Antonio Jordan's kind of hitting that wall that he's got to overcome, which is just a thing for freshmen. That's okay. And that now he's going to be set back a little bit with this high ankle sprain. I'm just kind of anticipating that both of these guys wind up getting redshirted. And I hope that they do. I know it's a little bit different now with the portal era and all that, but I don't want to see these guys get their red shirts burned because they're playing on special teams, or they get thrown out there in a random series for no reason in the fourth quarter, especially when you have so many receivers and such little separation between them all. You can preserve those guys a little bit. You just save a year and throw Cross Johnson out there if you need to, in a late game situation that's inconsequential or whatever. My last one here, and we touched on it just a little bit, but I didn't over under. I think we both assume that Rohan Jones is going to be the leader at the tight end position for Arkansas. I went over under 325 receiving yards for him. And I bet you can imagine why I picked that number.
So I just did some quick maths. 325 divided by 13, if you're assuming Arkansas makes a bowl game, is 25 yards per game.
Mm-hmm.
Did that have anything to do with it, or was that is this what Luke has had last year?
Luke has had 324 yards last year, banged up and all. Now, the interesting thing about Luke has is, because it's when he left, man, people switched up, and I get it. It was frustrating. You expected more from him. A lot of it, people were ticked off at at Bobby for not getting him the football early, and then it was, man, it's always hurt. What's going on? Oh, now he's just belling on us to go to Ole Miss. What the hell? But we know the talent that he has. He did have 4 touchdown receptions that led the Razorbacks last season, which is
crazy,
interesting given everything that went on with him. But that's the number I picked, because the way I see it is if he was a bust, if he was hyped, if he didn't pan out the way he wanted to, well, shouldn't Rohan Jones come in here and be just a little bit better?
Yeah, I think that's a fair premise. You know what I mean? And I think Rohan Jones is going to reach this total, and I don't think it's going to be by much. Like, I think it's going to be in that 350, 400 range. I think it's going to be matchup to matchup, honestly, with the tight ends. One, again, we just don't think they're going to be a huge part of the offense. Like, I don't think every matchup Arkansas is going in like, hey, we got to get Rohan and Jaden Platt going. Let's make sure they have 6 targets each. But I do think there's going to be some games where Rohan catches 5 or 6 passes, and maybe he makes one big play. I could see Rohan Jones having a game, against just a random opponent where he maybe has 80, 90 yards in one game or something like that, and it maybe turns the tide a little bit. I think he's going to be consistently catching 1 to 2 passes every week, and then we'll have the occasional matchup where he finds the soft spot of the zone, or there's some linebacker guarding him that can't do it, and Arkansas is able to exploit that a little bit. And so all in all, I don't think his stats are going to be terribly dissimilar from Luke has, but I buy that he's going to be right around that same yardage and maybe a little bit more.
I think that's about where I'm at too. I like it. I like it a
I'll
lot.
also say this last thing is, I also don't think like as close in the tight end room as the coaches are making it sound. Right now they're like, oh, we love Posky. Yeah, we love Posky. Jaden Platt, he's catching all these passes. And I do like Jaden Platt, but from a pass catching standpoint, I think Rohan Jones is still far and away their top option in the tight end room. And I think once the season starts, we'll start to see that. Like, I don't think they're going to target those other tight ends as much as they are making it seem early in camp.
Yeah, I think I'm feeling the same way there. I'm anxious to see what the split winds up looking like between Jaden Platt and Andreas Posky more than I am if either one of those guys are going to challenge Rohan Jones for the throne there at the top, no doubt about it. Hey, folks, today's episode of the Inside Arkansas Football Show is presented to you by our friends at Walter Christmas Lighting of Arkansas. The holiday season is right around the corner, especially Halloween. You don't believe it? Just go to the store. You'll see everything out there. The candy's out there. The pumpkins are out there. It's pumpkin spice season out at Starbucks. A lot of you love to get in the holiday spirit, but you just don't have the time or the resources to light up your house or wow the neighborhood. Luckily for you, Walter Christmas Lighting has you covered this fall and winter. If you're in Northwest Arkansas or the River Valley, hit them up. They'll come out there and take care of you. All the materials are provided, any color, any pattern. They'll install the lights for you. There's free maintenance throughout the holiday season. And then they come out and take down everything in January so you don't have to deal with it. If you sign up for the Halloween lights, they will also come out and give you your Christmas lights and set you up for 50% off. Just text our guy Brett for a free estimate at 479-459-1380. You can also check out their website at walterchristmaslighting.com or like them on Facebook by scanning the QR code on the screen. It's Walter Christmas Lighting of Arkansas, your local holiday lighting experts. Okay, we successfully aired it out here, Andrew, with our stat projections, but I think that we both feel like you like what I did there. We probably both feel pretty good about Arkansas's potential to have a potent ground game this year. So I say, let's attack the rushing attack, and I believe that you had some over-unders and things like that for us there.
I do. Now I want to start by just reminding everyone about Jaquin Jackson. And I feel like you and I have kind of on accident become like the Jaquin Jackson fan club. Because everyone seems to remember his era at Arkansas. Like, he was just not this impressive running back. And I think maybe people had high expectations for him and he didn't maybe live up to that, or, he was injured a little bit. He only played in 10 games and he left 1 or 2 of those games early and, sometimes needed a break. And I think that rubbed people the wrong way. And so I think there's a lot of Razorback fans who were coming into this thinking, man, I hope we are way improved from Jaquin Jackson at running back. And when they picked up Mike Washington, I was like, listen, If you're expecting him to be way better than Jaquan Jackson, I think you're maybe tripping because his career production does not lend itself to believe that it's going to be this guy that just, has 1,200 yards and dominates in the SEC. He was kind of a backup running back at New Mexico State and Buffalo. And so I kind of thought people should temper their expectations. Since then, we've heard a lot of great things about Mike Washington. The expectations for what he can do at Arkansas have risen a lot. But again, a reminder to what Jaquan Jackson did. He played in 10 games, and I think it was the Tennessee game he left early. There may have been another game in there that he left early and then, of course, did not play the bowl game. But he plays 10 games, has 149 rushing attempts, so almost exactly 15 rushing attempts per game. And he had 790 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, 79 yards per game. If you do the numbers, that's basically a 1,000-yard season, because if he had played all of the 12 games or even 13 games, of course, on average, if Mike Washington averages what Jaquan Jackson averaged in terms of per carry per game, he will rush for 1,000 yards if he stays healthy. But my question to you, before we even really just get an over-under on Mike Washington, actually, no, I guess we can get the over-under on Mike Washington first. If Mike Washington, again, does what Jaquan Jackson does and just doesn't get hurt, and he averages 15 carries a game, roughly 5 yards a pop, that would be 75 yards per game, which in 13 games would be 1,000 yards. And in 12 games would be 900 yards. Over or under 900 Mike Washington rushing yards. And this is a question that 6 months ago, you would have been like, without a doubt, no, he's not going to run for 900 yards. He's never done it in his career. Do you think Mike Washington can run for 900 Razorback rushing yards?
I certainly think that he can. I don't think that he will, though. And listen, I'm on the Mike Washington hype train here. I am certainly more of a believer than I was when he got here. Love everything that they've said about him. With the 91-yard touchdown run the other day, he's just, popping off all the big ones in the scrimmages to the point where Sam Pittman's like, all right, we're shutting this dude down. We get it. We know that he's the real deal. But what I will say is I do think that there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for him at some point. We talked about Antonio Jordan hitting the wall, and yeah, he's going to have better guys blocking for him. He's in a better situation here. He's also going to be having to run through better players, and it's going to be a little bit different of an experience than he's ever had before. And I think there's going to be a little bit of something to that. I could see him having one of those lulls. We talked about Taylon Green's, rushing, where for a while there in the SEC, it was like, man, they kind of had a hard time getting him going. I could see that being the case for Mike Washington. Not all SEC play, but maybe for a game or two out of the gates against some of those better teams, we're like, oh, wow, maybe this guy's met his match. And then he figures it out. He makes that natural adjustment. And I also think, and maybe I'm wrong here because I get it, like there's been a little bit of consternation with this situation going back to the offseason, but I do think they're going to make a concerted effort to be sure that Braylon Russell gets his touches and gets his opportunities and gets his series and gets his, gets the football put in his hands plenty of times there. I also think Taylon Green, if healthy, is going to run even more than he did last year. So I will buy Mike Washington leading Arkansas in rushing. And I'm going to go a little under, though, on the 900. I think he's going to be in that 750 to 800 range, leading a Razorback attack that's going to have, three guys probably up over 500-600.
So basically what I'm hearing from you, if I'm interpreting this correctly, is fall camp is a lie and Mike Washington sucks. Is basically the moral, like the sentiment you're trying to get across here. Which,
I think you summed it up well.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. So I think I know the answer to this next question that I want to cue you up for, because I've heard a lot of people talk about this. I've heard a lot of fans, media members, whoever say, hey, Arkansas could have 2,000-yard rushers. And that could be Mike Washington and Braylon Russell. That could be Mike Washington and Taylon Green, Braylon Russell and Taylon Green, Rodney Hill and AJ Green. Like it, there's unlimited options here. But what is more likely, if I were asking you, Curtis, Arkansas has 2,000-yard rushers or 0 1,000-yard rushers. And, this may sound obvious, but you did just say you think Mike Washington is going to be in that 750 to 800 range, and he's not going to be that far separated from some of these other guys. So I actually don't think it's that crazy to think that, you could see them. Like, I feel like even you could see the path for 2,000-yard rushers. Do you think it's more likely, though, that they have 0 1,000-yard rushers?
I do. I do think it's more likely that they have 0. And that could still wind up being one of the better rushing attacks in the SEC and in the country. You know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just I think it's a three-pronged attack. I like the balance of skill sets there between Braylon and Mike Washington and Taylon Green. And so the year that Arkansas, would they have four guys over 500 or
21.
something like that? But did they
Yeah,
have
you
a
had
1,000-yard
KJ.
rusher then?
They did not have a 1,000-yard rusher. I think KJ
Right.
led the team at 664, but there were,
Right.
you had Traylon Smith there, Rocket Sanders, AJ Green, like
AJ
all
Green.
those guys were there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of like that, except it's going to be more of a three-pronged attack with each one of those guys having more than that. You know what I mean? Like I could see Mike Washington going for 825 and, Taylon Green in the 700 range, higher than he was last year. And then you have Braylon Russell, who's at, 600, 625, something along those lines. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm with you. It's not a crazy premise at all. And if Arkansas does have 2,000-yard rushers, then I think they're probably going to wind up being a better football team than like my record projection of 6-6. I think that's the kind of stuff where you're looking at it and it's going, oh, things did go the right way. Oh, this offensive line was improved. It's not just one side of the football there that we're looking at. So if that happens, I think it's obviously a very good omen for Arkansas. But yeah, I'm going to say more likely that they have zero as opposed to multiple.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think sometimes, depending on who you're talking to, 1,000 yards could sound like the most possible yards of all time. It's not even 80 yards per game if you stay
Yeah.
healthy. You know what I mean? It's like it's really not that crazy. And so I think it's very much in play for any of these guys to do it. But I'm also with you where it's like, I mean, Jaquinta Jackson last year was built in a lab to get 1,000 yards for the Razorbacks. And he didn't do it because he just wasn't healthy, couldn't stay in the game and all that, and different factors laid in here. I think it's fascinating. 2014, I believe Arkansas did have 2,000-yard rushers and still went 6-6 because they just didn't have any passing attack whatsoever, and they had a good defense that year. But I'm with you where I think if Arkansas has 2,000-yard rushers on this team, that probably means they were winning a lot of games and they are at least 7-5. That would be pretty impressive. I want to talk about the rushing touchdowns for a second. I don't have a cool graphic for it.
Okay.
But last year, Arkansas had 34 rushing touchdowns, 15 of which came from Jaquinta Jackson, and then 8 of which came from Taylon Green. So you had 23 of your 34 rushing touchdowns where those two guys carried the load a good bit. You had 3 from Braylon Russell, 3 from Malachi Singleton, and 1 very famous one against Tennessee. You had 2 from Rashad Dubinion and 2 from Rodney Hill, and you had 1 from our guy Tyrell Reed, kind of spaced out those other ones. I guess my question is, one, is Arkansas going to have that many rushing touchdowns again? Because, Taylon Green had 15 passing touchdowns. I think Malachi Singleton maybe had 2 or 3. So you basically had double rushing touchdowns that you did passing. Maybe that's a little bit closer to 50-50 this year. But in terms of a dispersion of the touchdowns, let's say that Arkansas just replicates it. They have 34 rushing touchdowns again. If I told you that Arkansas had that number, now you had Jaquinta with 15, the next highest running back was at 3. I imagine you expect it to be a little bit closer there, right? So if I told you Arkansas ran the ball, or they had 34 rushing touchdowns, and we'll say Taylon Green stays in his kind of 8 to 10 range, what are you thinking touchdown-wise for Mike Washington, Braylon Russell, and maybe even some of those other guys?
That's interesting. So that 34 was tied for second in the SEC last year in rushing touchdowns. I think it was Alabama had over 40. I was looking at it a little bit earlier. I think Arkansas was tied with Tennessee, maybe.
Tennessee would sound right
At 34 with the rushing touchdowns there. But yeah, I'm with you. It would be awesome if Mike Washington rushed for 15 or more touchdowns there. But do you remember the heater that Jaquinta Jackson was on early in the season? We're like, good Lord, he might have 30.
Like 15 in 10 games where you miss some time in those games. That's actually insane.
Exactly. I think it would be a pretty hefty balance between Mike Washington and Braylon Russell there. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Mike Washington led the team in rushing yards and Braylon Russell led him in rushing touchdowns. Because I do think they're going to be handing him the pill down there, in goal line type of situations. So I would probably go, what were we saying for Taylon? Like 8 to 10. So that would leave you with a couple dozen.
I think he's been 8 to 10 every year of his starting. I think he had like 9 one year at Boise State. He had 8 one year, then he had 8 last year. So it's like he's like right in that range every year.
Yeah. So I might go with like one of those guys at 10, one of them at 8, and then just kind of mixing it in from there. Like I could see Cam Shanks getting a random, end around rushing touchdown or whatever. Maybe somebody else mixed in there. Can we just get Maddox Lassiter a touch just for the hell of it? Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? Oh gosh,
yeah,
nothing would make me happier. He's earned it. He's deserved it. But yeah, that's where I think I'm at. I didn't realize that the drop off was that drastic from Jaquin. But if you think about it, it makes sense because it was like, who else was there? R-Dub and Rodney Hill.
Yeah, Rodney Hill had one of those touchdowns in the UAPB game, I'm pretty sure. Tyrell Reed, of course, also had his in the UAPB game as well. So it's like, a lot of we're going to find out like pretty soon. But yeah, so outside of Jaquin and Jackson, your running back room outside of the starter combined for 8 touchdowns total between those 4 extra running backs. I think that, is going to be I think Braylon Russell might have 8 by himself. Matter of fact, I had it written down, Curtis. 10 to 12 for Mike Washington, 10 for Talon, and then 6 to 8 for Braylon. Like right at 30, which again is pretty lofty because, if they were second in the SEC at 34, getting 3 or 30 from your top 3 guys, and then maybe you can kind of, here's a touchdown here for Rodney Hill. Oh, KJ Jackson came in, he got 1. I think that's kind of the premise where I'm at. So I think we view it pretty similarly, that it's going to be a lot more split between Mike and Braylon than it was last year, where it was 15 and the next closest guy had 3. That was crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's fair for us to kind of be in that range of, similarly when we're also talking about Taylon Green, the touchdown thrower. Like he's probably going to be improved there, but I don't think he's going to double his touchdown passes or anything like that. So that would have Arkansas improved with their efficiency of getting it across the goal line, but nothing ridiculous there. So I don't think we're talking out of the side of our neck too much, which makes me happy. Anything else on the rushing stuff here? What you got?
Not really, honestly. Okay. I guess my only last question is, there's 2 school records that I feel like are in play, both of which involving Taylon Green. So Matt Jones, to my research and knowledge, has the quarterback rushing record at the University of Arkansas of 707 yards on the ground. Taylon had 602 last year. I think it's very in play that Taylon breaks that school record. KJ Jefferson currently has a school record with 9 rushing touchdowns from a quarterback. Do you think Taylon breaks both of those, one or the other, or neither?
Both.
I think he might break both too. I think he might have 750 and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think he'll do both. Wow.
And by the way, he also might break the school record for total offense, which he almost did last year. I'm not trying to do this, make this episode be like, hey, Taylon Green's the best quarterback of all time. But I remember when we were having this quarterback conversation the other day, and John brought up something where he was like, hey, if Taylon did X, Y, and Z, where would he be viewed? And I was like, oh man, if he did that, he'd be top 4 or 5. And people pushed back strong. And they're like, there's nothing he could do to get over Tyler Wilson. He could never pass KJ. And I'm like, I don't know if he does some of these things. Like, if Arkansas accomplishes anything this year, I feel like we'll have to kind of reinvent the wheel a little bit and reassess how we look at these things. But we'll let Taylon go out there and do it and prove that stuff first. But I do actually think that we're going to be on record watch for a few things with Taylon Green.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that he was so close in some of those areas last year. Never forget that people wanted him benched for Purdue backup quarterback Malachi Singleton. But anyway, moving on. A reminder, today's episode of the Inside Arkansas Football Show is presented by our friends at BetSaracen. It's Arkansas's #1 sports betting app. Got to tell you about their all-in on Arkansas 50% profit boost they've got going on Thursday and Saturday. All you got to do is opt in on the promotions page to activate the profit boost to your account. You'll then just need to find a pre-match straight bet that has odds of plus 2,500 or shorter from one of the Arkansas NCAA football matchups on Thursday or Saturday. So you got Missouri and UCA on Thursday, obviously Arkansas and Alabama A&M on Saturday. From the bet slip, you'll be able to add the activated profit boost to the bet. And then if the selected bet wins, you're going to receive a 50% boost on your winnings. This is available for Arkansas school games only, and a $25 max wager does apply. So boost your next Hogs bet, boost the NCAA football winnings by 50%, win bigger on those Arkansas games, and get to winning big money this season by downloading BetSaracen on your iPhone or on your Android. You can also bet online at BetSaracen.com. Okay, so switching over to the defensive side of the football here, and we'll do this in a quick hitter variety. And I've also got some special teams fun that we can have here as well at the very end. So let's start, Andrew, if you don't mind, with the pass rush, because we've had a lot of fun projecting the high flying, high tempo, full throttle offense for the Arkansas Razorbacks this year. You flip it over the other side of the ball and you go, oh, okay, so they do have a few things that they need to figure out. This team may not be the juggernaut. We're concerned about the pass rush. Are they going to be able to get home? What's it going to look like? And no, sacks aren't the end all be all. We learned that last year with a guy like Landon Jackson, for example. But the question is, who replaces what he did do? And so I ask you here, I'll be interested to see where you go. Over under 6.5 sacks to lead Arkansas this season. Will a Razorback accomplish that feat this year? Because the last 2 years, that was your high water mark. Landon Jackson did it both years.
I do not think Arkansas is going to have a guy with 7 sacks this year. And, could it happen? Absolutely. I mean, sacks are kind of a little bit of a random thing. I mean, you have one 3-sack game and all of a sudden you're, right there. So
it's like the last guy who got 7 sacks, by the way, 7 on the dot for Arkansas?
Jordan Dominic.
Yeah.
And I think he had a 3-sack game or something like that, where it kind of just was a little bit skewed there. So listen, like, again, sacks are a weird metric, but I don't think anyone's going to do it. Now, if you look at Arkansas's production last year, it was Landon Jackson had 6.5 sacks. The other defensive end, Nico Davier, what do you have? 2, maybe?
1.
Yeah. Quincy Rhodes had 1. Cam Ball had 1.5. Like, a lot of these guys had not much. It was very, skewed that way. I think it's going to be a lot more where, Justice Boone is likely going to be him and Phillip Lee are in that or spot there, that one defensive end spot. I could see Justice Boone having 3 or 4, and I could also see Quincy Rhodes having 3 or 4. So, like, you could argue the overall production is about the same or maybe even better, but I don't think they're going to have one guy have 7 sacks. I think that's, by the way, Trey Flowers never did 7 sacks. He never had more than 6 at Arkansas. I think Dietrich Wise had 1 season of his 5 at Arkansas where he had 8 sacks. So it's like there's been some good NFL defensive linemen who have not had more than 6.5 sacks. And so I don't know if I'm quite there yet where I could see one guy.
That's why it cracks me up when people are like, wow, Landon Jackson was really a disappointment. It's like, really? Because he is actually pretty impressive what he wound up doing there. You touched on the total. And so I throw this next over-under at you. 12 sacks combined for Arkansas starting defensive line, which I guess we can assume will be Quincy Rhodes, probably Justice Boone, and then Cam Ball and Ian Gifford. I did that because the starting 4 across last year combined for, I believe, that number. Let's see, 6.5 for Landon Jackson, 1. So that makes 7.5 with Nico there. Eric Gregory had 3. And so that got you to 10.5, and then Cam Ball had 1.5. So yeah, it was a dozen.
Yeah, so you had 4.5 sacks from your starting tackles last year.
Yeah.
And the thing that's tough about this is, like, Cam Ball, we all love Cam Ball, great personality. He's a good player. I mean, he's been from a grade standpoint, he's been pretty consistent throughout his career of being a solid run defender, has decent pass rush grades, but defensive tackles, as you know, not necessarily, like, it's pretty rare to see a defensive tackle other than Ndamukong Suh when he was at Nebraska and he almost won the Heisman or whatever, rack up on the sacks, like hell, I had a guy in Darius Philon who played in the NFL, was an awesome pass rusher. I think he maybe had like 3.5, 4 sacks his last year at Arkansas. And so Cam Ball, as good as Cam Ball is, I don't think he's about to like rack up 5 sacks by any means. You know what I mean? I think he's going to maybe have 2 or 3 total. I don't think Ian Gifford is going to rack up those sacks either. So I'm thinking maybe 1 or 2 for him. What I say, 3 or 4? I said 4 each for those other guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to go slightly under on this one, Curtis. And it's not going to be, again, it's not crazy. I think it's very possible that, hey, one random game, hell, they might have 10 sacks as a team against UAPB, and that might just kind of carry them for the whole season. I'm going to go slightly under, and the only reason I'm doing that is because none of these guys were getting sacks in scrimmages. And I know that sounds stupid to just be like, hey, whatever happened in the scrimmages is going to happen in real life. Maybe, but like if we're buying that Mike Washington is awesome because he's having great scrimmages and Monty Harrison is going to play because he's having great scrimmages. Well, how come that starting defense didn't get any interceptions and only had 1 sack in 2 scrimmages against the second team offense?
And it's only a touch sack. Yeah, like we
Yeah.
were hearing about like Trajan Jeffcoat, and it was like, yeah, he had
Oh, yeah.
5 sacks in the scrimmage, but
Turned out he was going up against a pretty bad offensive line, we found out.
Yeah.
And so, hey, maybe Arkansas really is just, got this awesome offensive line that's just not letting their Fort Knox over there. I'm going to go slightly under. It's not going to be that crazy because, again, I do think Quincy Rhodes and Justice Boone are going to have multiple sacks, 3 or 4 each. I think Cam Ball's probably going to be in that 2-3 range. And Ian Jaffrard is Ian Jaffrard.
Yeah, not his game.
I mean, he has 0 career sacks right now, I believe. I believe he's played 2 seasons at Arkansas and does not have a sack. Not a knock. It's just, him and Quincy Rhodes, I feel like, are 2 guys. Both have been at Arkansas for 2 years. 2 of the guys you're hoping take a massive step forward, they have a combined 1 sack in their careers. So to assume that they're going to combine for 5 or 6 now is a little bit too much for me, probably. And so I'm just going a little bit under it, like maybe 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And honestly, I look at Arkansas's total sack numbers just as a full defense from last year at 26. It wouldn't surprise me if the starting defensive line was a little bit under where they were last year, but maybe they equaled or even were a little bit higher as a team. I'm not going to predict it, but it wouldn't be crazy to me because I think they're going to utilize those linebackers as a strength, and those guys will be able to get home a little bit more. Philip Lee as a specialist there coming off the edge. I could see Charlie Collins getting 1. I could see David Oki or Danny Saili getting 1.5, 2 apiece. So I think there's a pathway for them to still get there. But I think the overall, again, the sacks aren't the end all be all. It's how much duress are you going to be able to consistently put opposing quarterbacks under throughout the course of the game? And you need that to come from your defensive line. And I don't know that they're going to have that throughout the course of the year.
I'll tell you who's a sneaky guy to watch in the sack department is Bradley Shaw.
Yep.
You remember llast year, Brad Spence, they started letting him loose a little bit in some games. He had some sacks in SEC games last year. What do you have total sacks last year? Was it like 2.5?
4.5. He was second on the team.
4.5? Yeah. That's notable right there. So I think that's a good point in terms of the overall sack production. Because again, if you have a weakness at D line, okay, you better make up for it somewhere else. I think Bradley Shaw is a guy that as a freshman is going to get on the field. I mean, I guess he was a freshman last year. Now he'll be a sophomore. He's going to get on the field a little bit more in SEC games, have a little bit more consistent role. I think that pass rush, being that unique guy to just kind of come off the edge or come through the middle of the line of scrimmage, like I think he's going to be the linebacker that they unleash a little bit and let Sorey and Dix kind of survey back there.
I think so too. Okay, so last year when we did this, one of our bolder predictions or whatever,
we crushed this. I remember the tackles.
Exactly.
We crushed this.
The question last year was, will Arkansas have a defender who racks up 100 or more tackles? And because we had looked at it and we were like, geez, Grant Morgan did it. Hayden Henry did it. Like all these guys who frankly weren't incredibly talented wound up doing it. And we're just trying to see, well, will the trend continue here? And we said no. And we were right. Xavier Sorey finished with 99 tackles on the year, which is crazy. So he was 1 under there. So I ask you, going into this year, Sorey's back for Arkansas. Do you believe that Arkansas will have a 100 tackle defender this season? There have been years recently where they've had multiple.
And I think they're going to have multiple this year as well. Now, not only do I think Xavier Sorey gets it, I think Steven Dix also gets it. I think it's just one of those things that is like
Dix had 72 last year.
Yeah, and he also didn't start until like a few games into the season. Like they ramped up his usage a little bit. I think those are 2 guys with a lot of experience. They look the part. I mean, Steven Dix could not look more like a linebacker. But I think those guys have just a ton of reliability and stability. And I think they're going to have to make up for some of the deficiencies of this D line, which we have not been shy about talking about. I think Arkansas is going to have 200 tackle guys. I think it's going to be one of those things because one of the things I remembered about that era with Michael Shear, where every linebacker was racking up tackles, it was just every single game you would look at the box score and you'd be like, oh wow, Bumper had 14 today. Grant had 13 today. Oh, Hayden had 15. And it's like you just knew it was going to be that way. I think that's going to be a thing that every single game this year, whether Arkansas had a good defensive performance or a bad one, and make no mistake, you can make a lot of tackles and have a bad defensive game. So I'm not even really saying that they're going to be dominant. I think the Steven Dix and Xavier Sawyer are just going to have magnets on their helmets, and the ball is just going to kind of find them, whether that's 8 yards downfield, in the backfield, maybe at the line of scrimmage. I just think those two guys are going to rack up tackles. I think they both go over 100, and I think they're both in the top 5 or 6 of the SEC.
Yeah, I think that I'm 100% on board with that. My only hesitation is just not knowing, is Sawyer going to play the first game or two or not? I know what Sam said he expects him to or whatever. Is it worth it to put him out there? But he probably could still get it anyway. Even if he just played in 10 games in a bowl or something, he'd probably get it. So
I was going to say, he could also sit out the bowl game, I guess, is also a possibility. But
well,
I'm with you.
True, but,
if he plays 10 games this year, and I know he's playing full snaps in those 10 games, I think he probably gets really close to that 100.
For sure. And, I was looking at it. I didn't realize that Nico Slaughter was second on the team in tackles last year with 80. That's a lot for a
prime example of you can be a high tackle guy without being a dominant defender.
Yeah. And I hope that Arkansas doesn't have a safety that's in that, that range again this year, but like it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if I'd say you get to 100, but to see a guy like a Larry Worth get up there with a ton of tackles because of the way that they're going to use him. Like they'll use him as a hybrid linebacker at times. They're going to line him up in a bunch of different spots. And I imagine they're going to be aggressive with him at times. He's so damn big and athletic there. Wouldn't say 100, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him at like 70 plus. Hell, he had 54 last year, which and
he was a part-time starter.
So yeah, exactly. Okay. Who will lead Arkansas in interceptions this year, Andrew? Do you remember who led Arkansas in interceptions last year?
I looked it up earlier today, so it's TJ Metcalf. It was TJ Metcalf.
Who picked TJ +1? He had 3 on the season.
And he was the only guy with multiple interceptions, if I remember correctly.
That is right. Yeah.
My research for this morning is holding firm.
Xavier Sawyer, Nico Slaughter, Jaden Johnson, Hudson Clark, Marquise Robinson. Shout out for making a 53-man roster, by the way. Jaheim Singletary and Miguel Mitchell all had 1 interception apiece for Arkansas.
Did you say Marquise Robinson made a 53-man roster?
That's the rumor.
Wow. Hey. You can't see my Flappy Birds, but
apparently him and Eric Gregory both. Unless Eric Gregory, I saw Marquise Robinson. I saw someone in the Discord said it, so it's got to be true.
I mean, nobody would lie in that Discord, Curtis. Nobody would lie. So I'm going to go with for sure a safety to lead Arkansas in interceptions. We've seen corners lead Arkansas in interceptions plenty. I mean, Monteric Brown did it. He's, by the way, on a 53-man roster, I believe. And you had what's his name? Nudie. Dwight McGlothern did it. Those two guys, one were like high-level, NFL players that were, all SEC type of guys. I don't think Arkansas has a corner that's that good, but I also don't think Arkansas has a corner who is savvy enough, because it's an art. As a corner, you would think, oh, yeah, corners get thrown out all the time. They rack up interceptions. It's actually pretty hard as a corner, especially if you're playing man coverage, to get an interception. You basically have to be perfect if you're going to get an interception in man coverage. But one thing Nudie would always do is kind of play off and be weird with his eyes and then force a throw, kind of bait the quarterback into thinking, hey, I've got enough room to make that out, and then make a bolt on it. I don't think Arkansas has a corner who is like that type of ball hawk, going to always be around the football type of guy. And so I think the middle of the field, safety, I think also Arkansas is going to be running a lot of zone looks. I know they don't say they're going to. Marcus Woodson pushes back. They're going to be running some zone. I think I wouldn't be surprised if one of those linebackers maybe caught a couple picks, but I'm trying to decide which safety I think is going to lead the team. Larry Worth, I don't believe, had one last year. Miguel Mitchell's the coach on the field, so maybe he's the guy who does it. But I'm gonna go with Larry Worth. I'm gonna lean with Larry Worth, who, by the way, I just love Larry Worth. Like I'm really happy he's a Razorback. He's just an overachiever. I remember seeing a video of him this past spring, and he was walking through the practice facility, and he was just like on his Instagram, kind of going, doing a little video, and he's like, man, it never gets old, like walking through here and realizing that like I'm playing SEC football. Like you can see it's one of those guys, it means something to him. And all these guys, it means something to them to be playing at this level. But this is a guy that started as a walk-on at the FCS level and has overachieved at every possible stop. I'm a huge fan of Larry Worth. I think he's a guy that I really like in that secondary. I don't think he's going to have 9 picks, but I think he's going to lead the team with 3 or 4.
I like it. I like it a lot. I'm going to go with Miguel Mitchell for the reasons that you said. He is the coach on the field. So they keep saying, if he's a genius back there, he's going to be able to see what a quarterback's going to do. He's going to know where that football is going. And I'm trying to remember, Was it the bowl game? When did he have this pick that he returned 47 yards?
Would have had to be the bowl game.
I guess so, because he was only playing it was really after that Ole Miss debacle where he was
losing a Tech.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at it, but yeah, I'll go with Miguel Mitchell. You went with Larry Worth. I like it. I'm with you on the thing about the corners. That's a really good point. Jordan Young is one who's interesting to me. I like him a lot, and I'll be anxious to see if he's able to snag a couple. But I guess that leads into my next question here, and then we'll move on and we'll wrap up pretty quick with some fun special team stuff. But over under 10.5 total interceptions for Arkansas this season. And I went with that number for multiple reasons. One, Arkansas had 10 last year, so this would be improving on that mark. But I just went back through the last 4 seasons, and Arkansas's average number of interceptions is 11 over the course of the last 4 years.
I don't know, man. I'm having a hard time. I think I said this on Inside Arkansas Live the other day. Turnovers are kind of a just complete crapshoot that, like, aren't really like, you can look at it through the lens of like, oh, I think they're going to be good here, so they'll do this. Interceptions are kind of random. It requires a quarterback to make a mistake. It requires you a lot of times to have some pressure on the quarterback, which is ambivalent here, but you also need some luck. You need some things to bounce your way. You need that pass to be off target. I'm going to go over, but I'm only doing it for the randomness factor of it, Curtis. Like, literally, just because I'm like, they're kind of just due for something like that. I also think we've seen it in years past. Hell, last year, Arkansas had 4 picks in that one game. They had the Ole Miss game back in 2020. Like, we've seen just one random game skew it. I'm counting on something like this happening. I'm concerned about Arkansas not getting sacks in the scrimmages against themselves. I'm very concerned that KJ Jackson did not cough up the ball against the one defense.
Yeah. I think that's a very good point. And just to add a little bit more context to it from just like an SEC, a league-wide perspective, Arkansas's 10 last year. It was right in the middle of the pack. They were tied for 8th with Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Texas led with 22. That's a lot.
Wow.
Oklahoma, like below Arkansas, Oklahoma had 9, Auburn had 8, Georgia had 8, Mississippi State and Missouri both had 7, and LSU only had 6.
Georgia
improved defense.
Ball, man.
Not hawking the ball. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. What the heck, man? What's going on there? Okay. Moving on to special teams real quick, and we'll have a little bit of fun with it. We'll do the obvious stuff first. Okay. So Devin Bell over under 46 yards per punt this season for one captain, Devin Bell.
I'm going under, Curtis, but here's the reason why.
Okay.
I think he's going to have more kicks inside the 20, but less, we're at the 27, our own 27, and we really need to boot it because that's what you need. You need those like long ones. But I think he's going to have a lot of punts this year where, Arkansas is at their own 47, 46, and he pins someone down at the 11. And so it's not like a huge punt, but it's a good, effective punt. I think he's going to go under. Also, 46 yards per punt it's a lot. Like, I mean, Max Fletcher did it a few years ago, but that's not a number you see all the time for SEC punters. Hell, there were years where I would have been pleased with 42 from an Arkansas punter. I think he's going to have a great year as a punter, but I'm going to go slightly under on the yards per punt because I think he's going to have some coffin corners, as they call them.
That's exactly why I was going to go under. I picked 46. I think he was at 45.2 last year, and 46 would put him. It would have been top 3 in the SEC last season. Jesse Mirko at Vanderbilt, 48.04 per attempt. That's a lot. And then Kroger, the dude at South Carolina, was 47.8. And so then that would have put Devin Bell in third there. But yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Arkansas didn't have any problem moving the ball between the 20s, and I don't think they will again. So I'm with you. We're going to have a lot of those Samolytics situations where it's like, we're at the 41. What do we do here?
4th and 1 at the 46, and they punt it into the end zone.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Over under 80% field goal accuracy for freshman kicker Scott Starzik. That's the benchmark that Scott Fountain has thrown out there, just for the record.
Here's why I'm going over for kind of an opposite reason. I think that Arkansas is not going to lean heavily on Scott Starzik. Like, I don't think Scott Starzik is going to have 9 attempts from 50-plus yards. Although he has had plenty in scrimmages and all that, I think they're going to be pretty much like I could see him doing a thing where he like starts kind of like Jake Bates did last year, where he like starts 8 of 8, but they're all from like 32, type of thing where they're kind of getting his confidence up. Occasionally, you'll be in a spot where, hey, we just need you to attempt this 51-yarder here in the third quarter of an SEC game, and we'll see how he does in that range. From what we've heard about Scott Starzik, he's been about 50-50 on his long kicks, like of his 50-plus yarders. So I could see him being, like let's say he goes 2 for 5 from 50-plus. I think he's going to be money from inside 40. And so I actually am going over 80%, which I think is going to surprise some folks. It's not because I think Scott Starzik is this generational talent. I just think Arkansas is going to be pretty careful about how they use him. They're not going to put him in weird spots. I also think if it's 4th and 2 anywhere inside the 45, Arkansas is probably going for it. Like, I think that's something that they're going to probably do a lot. And so I could see him, going 12 for 15 or something like that, and like not really having a ton of long, hard kicks.
If you feel good about your offensive line with the dynamic that you have in the rushing attack, that what you just said should absolutely be the case, that they go for it in those situations more often than not. Cam Little, true freshman Cam Little, 24 field goal attempts. I didn't realize it was that many. He was 20 of 24.
You remember the Texas game when he had like 7 kicks?
Crazy, man. Yeah, and then it's interesting, his sophomore year, just 13 of 16 in 2022 there for Cam Little. But yeah, he was over 80% every year, which is unsurprising. He's unbelievable. Last year it was a mess. And let's see, what were those guys last year? That was nasty.
Phillips ended up being somewhat decent down the stretch, but the other guy,
Matthew Shipley was
Shipley, not Phillips.
Yeah, Shipley was 10 of 12 once he got in there and had a long of 55. So good on him. But yeah, Kyle Ramsey was 7 of 12, and he was 4 of 9 between 40 and 49 yards.
That continues to be the weirdest thing that ever happened. Like, it's not crazy agree, but like all fall camp, there was no controversy. It was like, oh yeah, they brought in Shipley to be the kicker. Seems like he was winning the job. All indications were he was the guy, and then randomly week 1, it was just like, no, here's Ramsey.
Wild
and
behavior.
It went to Shipley eventually, and it seemed to go okay, but
yeah, okay. 2 fun ones here, and then we'll get out of here. Over under 2.5 special teams fakes attempted by Scott Fountain and the boys.
I'm going to go under simply because Arkansas has had a lot of fakes in the last however long. They had a really good one against A&M that should have won them the game. And then, if you remember, they tried to run it back.
Yeah.
You can't have 2 in one game. Like, that cannot happen. And I think the fact that they have so many fakes on film over the last several years is going to kind of like already give them that threat to where I don't think there's going to be, because a lot of times what happens, like when I think it was actually Devin Bale that called his own, because he was like, hey, we got the look they said to look for. I see these guys, they're going back. All right, I'm just going to run this one. I don't think there's going to be as many of those, because I think special teams coordinators against Arkansas are like, hey, these guys ran 2 fakes in one game last year. They ran one in 2021, ran one in 2022, did an onside in 23. Like, they will probably be on alert for that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go with 1 or 2, but I don't think it's going to be a regular.
You're probably right. I'm going to go over just because I want it to happen. I love that stuff. There's no better Sam Pittman memory ingrained in my mind than the fake at Alabama. That just shit-eating grin that he had on his face. It was incredible. Which leads me to the last one here. And this is interesting because, Arkansas was rumored to have dynamic guys in the return game, and Isaiah Satania, and then, Bryce Stevens was a flash in the pan there for a minute. But now they have one who's like a preseason All-American here. But you know how it is with sometimes it's just hard to get those opportunities. What's more likely, Andrew, a Cam Shanks punt return touchdown or the Hogs scoring on one of these special teams fakes, one of the Scott Fountain specials?
I'm going Cam Shanks. I think we have a very firm, because Cam Shanks, by the way, is a guy that preseason All SEC. I think he was All SEC or All Conference at UAB in terms of punt return. Like, it's rare that you bring in a guy that has accolades as a returner, but Arkansas does have that. It's the first time in a while they've had a guy. Yeah. That's possible. I think he houses one Saturday. I was gonna get to that eventually. I'll just go ahead. I think he houses one Saturday, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that as long as he houses one at any point throughout the year, that's a success.
Yeah.
I love spots in sports. Like, hey, D-line is kind of like this where you don't have to do that much. You don't have to be play-to-play brilliant. If you get one sack a game as a defensive lineman, you're going to be in Canton. You're going to be a Hall of Famer. If you can house one kick per year as a return guy, you're a stud. I mean, Devin Hester has like 12 in his entire life, and like he's going to have a statue of him all over the place. Like, it's like I actually I'm all for it, and I think it's actually pretty likely that he houses one at some point this year, and I think it might be Saturday.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'd be shocked if he didn't, but I'd be a little bit disappointed if he didn't have at least one huge return, whether it's for a touchdown or not, in one of the first 2 games here. I think he's probably going to be good for it there. Now, I will say, I might go with both. Like I could see both happening. I say run it back and let's have it be a Devin Bell. He's the holder, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Devin Bell to Andreas Poski, fake field goal touchdown. That's what we're going to have there.
How about, I remember in 2013, Brett Bielema ran a trick play where the long snapper on the punt team caught the pass. And it was some weird thing. Get us an Ashton No 32-yard reception on 4th and 4. That's what I'm living for. But to answer the question, though, I was thinking about some of the best fakes that they've done. Devin Bell last year against A&M. The Kern one actually did go for a touchdown, right?
Yeah, they scored on that one.
The Kern one, I think, is the only one that's gone for a touchdown. Max Fletcher had a couple fakes in 2023, neither of which went for a touchdown. You had the cool Jake Bates onside kick. I feel like there was a couple other little fakes, but most of them don't
Never forget the Auburn game a few years ago with when they were interviewing Darren McFadden on the sidelines and they attempted that weird –
yeah, no, the chest pass one was a tough. That did not go for a touchdown either.
Yeah, it did not.
But no, I think most of these times, like the fakes that work, even the best ones don't go for touchdowns most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I think it's very possible they convert a fake or two and don't score a touchdown, and then Cam Shanks isn't even that good as a punt returner, but houses one.
For the most part, for it to go for a touchdown, you're really at risk of giving up a guaranteed 3 points. It's got to be a short field goal, for him to try to do that. Otherwise, it's crazy. Like I mean, I would want to see
a field goal from it's like a 28-yard field goal, and you're faking
right.
it.
That's what's crazy about the Alabama thing, and I wonder how many fake punt touchdowns that there have been because you got a guy sitting back there waiting to catch. You know what I mean? So,
right.
I don't know how many of those there have been. Who was it who got the onside kick and damn near scored on? Was it Bumper Pool?
Bumper. It happened twice.
Yeah.
I don't remember who they were playing that kept kicking on sides to them. Maybe it was Mississippi State. I don't know, but they kicked multiple ones, and he got hawked on one of them. He had like a seam, and then one of them he just ran out of gas. And I think he had just played an entire series defensively, and then was on the hands team, and then it was just listen, I was not ready to run 60 yards. Sorry.
It's hilarious, man. That's good stuff. Okay, well, I think that's all I have there. Is anything else that you wanted to touch on? We've been doing this for about an hour and a half, which is par for the course when we get together. So
I guess my last message to the fan base, if I can offer one,
of course,
is that it's very interesting when we're contextualizing these stats and when we're referencing all these things from last year. And I think the weird thing about Arkansas last year is that they just really racked up stats against bad teams. And I don't mean that as a knock, really, because it's it doesn't make you a bad offense to have 750 yards against UAPB and have 700 yards against Oklahoma State and still lose. But I think this year I'm hoping there's just more well-roundedness with the stats. Like, it was kind of weird because, again, I see people all offseason, they were like, hey, Arkansas was, top 4 in the SEC in yardage. And it's like, yeah, but that's not really how it went down. And so my only hope is that we get some clarity this year on the stats and we're able to just see the stats and know, hey, Arkansas is the best offense in the SEC. They're this in scoring. I just want it to be normal. I don't want it to be as skewed as it was last year. So I'm hoping that if you guys are going to come dunk on us after the season and make fun of all our takes in this very pod, that at least, they don't do it because they had 800 yards against Arkansas State, and that's why we were wrong. You know what I mean?
I feel you. Yeah, I echo that sentiment for sure. We welcome being dunked on. But if you're going to dunk on us when we get something wrong, just give us a slight pat on the back for the things that we do get right. Just even it out a little bit. We need that positive affirmation in our life from time to time.
There had to be something we got right in this
Had to
right?
be. Yeah, something for sure. Yeah, we'll have one of the interns clip out every single thing that we said, and we'll only put those out when it's right.
We'll save them for a good day. Yeah,
exactly. All right, everybody. Well, hey, appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. And a reminder, subscribe to the Inside Arkansas YouTube channel. Turn on those notifications. That way, when we go live, when we upload new videos, and join us Thursday night, 8 p.m. for the EA Sports video game live stream. Alabama A&M doesn't have a team, but we're going to figure it out, and we'll have a lot of fun doing that. And then join us for all of our game coverage as the season is on the verge of finally happening. We're done talking about it, and we can actually evaluate some real football. We're looking forward to it. But for Andrew Ellis, it's been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.